Guys, welcome back to another episode of A2 the show.
We're
Today we
back.
have the great Renee Fitton. I hope I'm
Renee.
pronouncing it correctly. My French
Yes.
isn't that good.
Renee
Um,
Fitton, if you really want to do it
Renee
on the
Fitton
nose.
I'll leave that
from
to
the
you.
Canada.
I'm going to stay on the English side maybe. So, Renee is a registered dietitian and entrepreneur specializing in the intersection of nutrition, healthcare, and education. And you also have a Master of Science from the USC.
Mhm.
And you currently serve as the Director of Education and Healthcare Sales at ProLon, which we'll be delving more into later on. So, and she also helped lead education and sales strategies for the company's pioneering work in fasting mimicking diets and personalized nutrition. So, speaking of fasting mimicking diets, maybe let's just bring it up from the beginning and
Yeah.
also discuss like the different systems that also involve fasting because we hear so many different styles of fasting. There's like intermittent fasting, there's the full fasting, there's the one there's Ramadan that Muslims also do once a year. So and then we're being introduced to something new such as the fasting mimicking. What's the difference between all of these, and then what can you tell us about what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fasting, as you mentioned, it is really an umbrella term. It covers so many different types of fasts. And I think when we use the word fasting, many people are initially thinking water only fasting. So I'm only going to drink water.
Right.
And I'm going to do it for about anywhere between usually 16 to maybe 24 hours. That's what most people are thinking when they think of fasting. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there is, as you mentioned, a much wider range. So, the way that we typically define fasting, at least in the broader fasting community, is into various buckets. So, there is intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting is what we consider any fast that is under 2 days. So, a lot of people would have
Oh,
assumed that it would have to be like under a day, but no, intermittent fasting goes all the way up to a 2 day fast.
Okay.
Now,
mm-hmm.
anything over 2 days, that's what we call prolonged fasting. So it is extended fasting in that time. And the reason we define that kind of point in the or that line in the sand at that time point of 2 days is because there's a shift that happens in the body at the 2 day mark that really defines the differentiator between these shorter fasts and the longer fasts. And that shift in the body is known as autophagy, or really what that word means is deep cellular cleanup. It's that our body is going in and eating all of the junk that we've accumulated over time and getting rid of it. And it's kind of like this spring cleaning that happens. So if we really want to turn on that deep spring cleaning and that deep cellular cleanup, then we have to fast for over 2 days. So that's why we define these two
Mm.
groups as intermittent fasting under 2 days and prolonged fasting over 2 days. Now, the other big differentiator is what you are eating when you're fasting, which seems like
Mm-hmm.
counterintuitive because when we think of fasting, it's like you're not eating anything. But
Right.
Right.
there are actually a handful of different um, definitions of fasting based off of what you are consuming. So there is actually a concept of dry fasting where you don't even have water. And that's going to be kind of your most extreme. Then we have water only fasting. And in these cases, a lot of people will add in things like electrolytes. To just kind of help manage the body. Some people have slightly different definitions of how much you can add into water only fasting before it's no longer water only fasting. But
Mm-hmm.
water only fasting is essentially, as defined, mostly just water only. And then there's the concept of fasting mimicking. And fasting mimicking is the ability to get the benefits of water only fasting, but while eating food. And I'm not just talking like things like broths and teas and things like that, or even juices. We're talking real food like nuts and seeds and soups and crackers and chocolate and real food that you can consume, but your
Okay.
body is going into this true and deep fasted state. And so when I'm deciding what kind of fasting I want to do, I often will lean towards, especially when I'm looking at prolonged fasts that are over 2 days, my choice is going to be to go for that fasting mimicking option where I can still eat some food, still provide some nutrition. It's safer. It's obviously easier. Um, and it has been shown to be muscle protective. So when we go into these
Mm-hmm.
longer fasts, we
Mm-hmm.
don't get some of those downsides. So that's kind of like a very, very long, but actually, believe it or not, abridged definition of fasting.
All right. Side, do you do any fasting?
I practice like intermittent fasting on a daily basis, I would say, but it's mainly just me skipping breakfast and then not having lunch until like 4 p.m. or 3 p.m., something like that. I don't know
Okay.
if that counts.
Does that
It does
count?
count. It does
Okay.
count, actually. Even if you're not doing it on purpose, it's still intermittent fasting by definition.
Oh, let's go.
So yes, that counts. Now, I will say while you are still getting the benefits, and especially in men, you guys have the luxury of getting a little bit less of the downsides from skipping breakfast that women
Yeah.
do face. But across the board in both men and women, it is generally recommended that you still consume breakfast. And if you're going to try and reach those intermittent fasting windows, to actually bring up your dinner time, because our bodies follow
Mm,
a circadian rhythm,
Right.
meaning
right.
it follows like kind of the movement of the sun and the way that the clock goes, just like for anything else. Our cells all have their own clock. And the way that our cells that help manage blood sugar work is that they work really well in the beginning of the day, but they don't really work very well at the end of the day. And that's
Mhm.
so if you're eating food at the end of the day, like closer to bedtime, your body really isn't going to be able to process it and manage it as well as it could in the beginning of the day. So if
Mhm.
you do want to do daily intermittent fasting where you're, shortening your eating window to maybe anywhere between 12, 8 hours or so, it's
Mhm.
better to have breakfast and bring up your dinner. But a lot of people find that way harder. And so
Yeah.
they just do it the alternative way.
Solution. What if you do both? You bring it just even closer. It's like
You can
snap
if
it
you want to. Is
in
that
the
the
afternoon.
solution? That's up
I
to
don't
you.
know. I'm just saying, like you said, both are good, both work. Maybe just do both. All right.
You could, okay, so it's an interesting concept. Um, in that, yes, you can.
Mhm.
But what we also have to remember is that when we shorten our eating window, what we're also doing is we're creating a little bit of stress in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we give our body that stress, it
Yeah.
is beneficial as long as it's not happening all of the time, because
Yeah.
then it becomes chronically stressed. So if you were to increase the window in which you are fasting and therefore shorten the window in which you are eating more dramatically on both ends, you would probably eat less calories in total. And what you would also do is you would spend more time in what we call a ketogenic state,
Mm-hmm.
meaning your body is
Okay.
going to be using fat as energy. And that is really good for weight loss. So if I have patients that are really looking to reduce their fat mass and looking to lose weight specifically, especially belly fat and even visceral fat, I
Yeah.
will potentially look at increasing their fasting window on an intermittent fasting level.
Mhm.
But I wouldn't recommend this for any healthy individual, because then you're just causing all of this additional stress when you don't need the fat loss, and it's not really necessarily going to be as advantageous
Okay.
and
And so
potentially
now
detrimental.
we're going into ketosis, which is a new system, and we've
Mhm.
also mentioned your patients, which maybe you wouldn't recommend this to all of them. How does an individual know like which system works for them? What is suitable for their body? What is suitable? I mean, obviously, also gender plays a role as well. Like, what's different diets for men and women? How do you make a
Yes.
difference? How do you understand which
So
one's better?
importantly, the best thing to do is to work with a professional that has a degree in nutrition science.
Yeah.
That is, at the end of the day, the easiest and best way to do it, because then you will get the personalized recommendations. Now, I think in the world today, we are really finally starting to recognize the importance of personalization. That's why we have all these cool wearables and all of these things that help us better understand what is going on. But we are really still only scratching the surface. The amount of personalization from individual to individual is vast. The difference in not only our gender, sure, yes, that's one big difference that will call out maybe some of the hormonal differences between us. Of course, some of the needs in terms of total quantity, volume, calories, all of those things, sure, are also going to be different based off of our muscle mass density. And that also can differ between men and women more dramatically. But those things, yes, will play a part in personalizing. But let's also not forget the differences between all of us in our microbiome composition, in our muscle versus fat versus all other body composition that would play a part in personalization. Not to mention just your environment. So I make changes and recommendations based off of how much somebody travels versus how sedentary they are versus how how much exercise can they realistically fit in? What type of exercises are they fitting in? All of these things play into the personalization of a protocol. And that's why I don't recommend that people do this alone. Just to understand a person and make a starting point recommendation, a dietitian needs usually at least an hour of time to understand what you're doing, who you are, look at your labs. Ideally, you've already done all of this in advance. And then from there, usually we need several months to run more tests, to test things out, see what works. And so if you want to be your own guinea pig, if you're like, Renee, I appreciate that, but I want to do it all by myself, fine.
Yeah.
You can do that. But what you need to do is really give yourself small changes where you can assess the before and after. You typically are going to need to give yourself at least 30 days with any given intervention that you're trying to see if it's making a difference. And you want to do pre and post tests. So whatever your goal is. So let's say the world is big on supplements these days, right? So let's say you want to add in creatine to your protocol. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Great. Now, typically people are pairing that with a weight-bearing exercise routine. So first, do your weight-bearing exercise routine for a month, see how much you improve from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. Then on the next month, you're going to add in creatine. Ideally, that's the only thing that you're going to add. You're not also adding in aminos, and you're not also adding in a protein powder, and you're not also adding in all this other stuff, because you won't really know if it's the creatine that's helping you or the protein or whatever. And now you're spending, 3x on your stack that really maybe only one or two of those things worked.
Yes.
And so you have to be patient. Like in the grand scheme of your life, 1 month of precision is going to be worth it for you to know if this works for you or not, than just trying to do it all.
Okay.
So
now that you're mentioning creatine, something that I've been also seeing a lot, it's mainly through social media though, so I haven't done proper research on this, so maybe you can help. I keep getting these posts of how creatine is so useful, for the proper muscle growth and also for energy. And there's one post where it said that they did the test or some small study on sleep deprived people, gave them creatine, and they said they're operating better than people who were, sleeping very well, have no sleep deprivation at all. So is this a fact, or is this just a fad,
Don't believe everything you see on your TikTok.
And that's why I'm asking the expert. I'm asking the expert. I need to understand. I need to know.
Thank you. It's an important question, and you are right to think twice about what you hear on social media, no matter how many people are talking about it.
Yes.
And that's something, for example, right now that I would call out the protein.
Okay.
ways that is going out, and we can come back to that. But first, I'm going to talk about this creatine piece, because creatine actually has been around for a very, very long time. A lot of people have been big proponents of it in the past, and it actually got a bad rep like several years ago. Just because it was so new and there was uncertainty on the safety of it. But now what we're seeing is actually a lot of really good research with creatine and its utility, especially for muscle synthesis, but as you mentioned, for many other purposes too. So, again, everything should be highly personalized, and you should work with a healthcare provider to confirm that it is right for you. It's not like a blanket for everybody, but I do believe, based off of the research so far, that it is a good addition to most individuals, especially if you're doing weight bearing exercise. It's a great addition.
Okay. Who are the exceptions?
It's usually for health reasons that maybe somebody may not. So, usually various health conditions might not be a great fit. Also, as with anything, you are adding substances to your body. And when you add more substances to your body, your liver is doing more and more work. So whatever you eat, whatever you consume, whatever toxins you have, alcohol, of course, a lot of us are consuming that goes through your liver to detoxify, to clean, to utilize. And so the more and more of those types of things that you do, the more problematic that can be on your liver. So that's also just something to be mindful of. But if you are being cautious, then it can be good. That's another thing, is that with creatine, personally, I believe that it doesn't need to be an everyday item. It can be something that you consume maybe on your heavy weight bearing exercise days. So maybe it's like 3 days a week that you're having that creatine.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Ali.
All right. So you're telling us about protein, and like how protein is becoming a huge, let's say, a fad, because it's in everything now. You can get like protein bagels, protein potato chips, protein cookies, protein pancakes. It's like, doesn't make sense, right? What am I eating? Is there meat in the pancakes? I'm like, what am I doing?
It's crazy. It's honestly, the thing is that we as a society, we like simple things that we can latch onto and be like, I can do this. And protein is currently that thing. Like, why don't I just have more and more and more? And we often get trapped in the, if some is good, then more must be better too. And that's, I think, where we're getting into problems with the protein space, because protein is incredibly important. Do not get me wrong. We should be consuming adequate protein. And the problem, though, is that for a lot of Americans, it's not so much that they're not consuming enough protein, it's that they're consuming a ton of other things that are not healthy. And so while, yes, protein is oftentimes going to be something that's not as significantly paired with a ton of other refined grains and carbohydrates and sugars, maybe, nowadays we're seeing them get paired together, as you mentioned, with the protein pancakes, for example. Like, that's not solving the problem here. The reason why I think people are big proponents of like pushing protein is because it is really satiating. So that means that when you eat protein, you are not as hungry. As maybe if you were to eat something that is made with refined sugars and things like that. But there are other things that can help you feel really full. And those are things like healthy fats and fiber. So protein, yes, has that capacity, but so do other things. So that's, again, like in the scope of nutrition, what we typically try and avoid is like hyper pinpointing one thing as like this amazing piece, and rather being like more holistic in our assumptions. So saying, yes, have a healthy amount of protein, but also have healthy amount of fiber and a healthy amount of healthy fats. And when we look at the new upside down food pyramid that has recently come out, what you see is, yes, like this really big focus on animal proteins, which is, I think what they're trying to say is, look, we don't care so much anymore. Yeah, here it is. And actually, let's zoom into that baby, because what you'll notice, yes, amazing, there's lots of vegetables and there's some fruits on there, but there's also a lot of red meat and protein on the top left hand corner. And what we don't see very much of is plant-based proteins as alternatives there, which I find a little bit strange.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
we also don't see a lot of these really high fiber things like nuts and seeds and legumes, which is also really interesting. So I think that this food pyramid has some merit, but I think that there's a lot of things that are missing here. Um,
Mhm.
I could spend days on talking about this new food pyramid because it is
Yeah, because it
not
used to
my
be the other way around, right?
well. Okay, first let's talk about that, because it used to be actually a plate before this new upside down food
Mm.
pyramid. It was a plate, and then before that, like you have to go pretty far back to go into the other version of the food pyramid, where they had grains at the bottom, but it was making up more of it, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, and so I feel like this is just a little bit, it's funny because when people see this, they're like, oh, it's just, we've completely flipped the pyramid. But like, that's so old. We actually have gone from a really great model that was a food plate that
Mhm.
to this one. We've somehow missed the middle one. The middle one, which was the food plate, which we called my plate,
Mhm.
it allowed for a lot more flexibility and variety in how you put the plate together. So it would say half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and then a quarter should be a protein, and then a quarter should be whole grains. And
That makes
then
sense.
people
Mhm.
can, right? And
Mhm.
like, also it's helpful. Like, how do I make a meal with this upside down food
Just a
pyramid?
little
Like,
bit of rice and like a lot of meat and cheese and broccoli.
yeah, yeah. And
That's not
it's like,
realistic. Who eats
right. And
that?
like, by the way, where are the, like, it's like the healthy fats are like kind of in the middle there.
There's a
But
lot of
then
Milk
they've
milk.
got
butter
like a
here.
giant
Milk.
stick of butter in there. I'm like,
You got cheese all the way up there, like between the chicken and the.
yeah, it's so interesting. And so, another thing that I'll talk about, because I mean, this is all over social media right now, but
Mhm.
like, so many of the high protein
Mhm.
influencers are like thrilled about this. And a lot of the people who are like pushing back on the saturated fat research, and a lot of people who
Yes.
are, they're just like big proponents of this new food pyramid. And one of the things that they are constantly referencing is one, that the old food pyramid is the past version, and they've
Mhm.
again completely skipped over the fact that we had the my plate. And they say that in the old food pyramid, the reason why grains were so high on that food pyramid is because of lobbyists
Mhm.
for the cereal companies
Right.
and the grain companies. And I do actually, I mean, we know that that is true. There were a lot of industry sitting at the table when these guidelines are being made. But I always like, that's true. And I'm not saying that's not true, but it's kind of funny to me to hear
Is this the
that
my
you
plate you
would,
were referencing,
that's the
Renee?
my plate. Yeah, there you
Okay,
go. See,
okay,
and
I
like,
see.
this is like, oh, I
Yeah,
can
that
make
looks
a, I can
balanced.
make
I
a
could
meal
do
with
that.
this, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, we just didn't spend enough time educating people on the my plate, which it had a marketing issue. The my plate had a marketing issue, is what it did.
Mhm.
But
Ah, okay. But
yeah, the upside down pyramid is like getting the best marketing of all time. Um,
Well, there's
so
the meat
so
lobby too. That's maybe very excited
Well,
about
that's
this
what I was
new
about to
thing.
say, is that
Yeah.
that's what we're missing, is like
Mhm.
the cattle. Like, are you kidding me? The giant piece of steak in the top left hand corner with the cheese, which is dairy. Cattle and dairy have some of the most money in the lobbying
Mhm.
space. The amount of research that
Mm.
they put out and spun is like it's like Coca-Cola levels,
Mm-hmm.
maybe more, honestly, realistic. That's something that I'm going to look into, is how much they're actually funding, in comparison to some of these other, villains out there in the food world, right? And so, I hesitate to use that as a reason why it works or doesn't work, because really, at the end of the day, what we should be looking at is unfunded research on food and seeing how it impacts individuals, and focus on, yes, a less processed, less refined,
Hmm.
a whole food diet,
Right.
and focus more on, again, like kind of that my plate
Right,
example.
because there's a huge
Right.
difference between eating like bologna you buy from the store, or like a processed sausage, right? Versus
Right.
like
Yeah.
a natural cow that's been freshly,
Right.
made.
And
Yeah,
so
to be.
many of those
Hmm.
influencers that are big proponents of animal protein and high protein diets, they will all tell you that they will only eat regenerative beef that has been da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, great. So what about everybody else who's eating the highly, um, they all have all of these bovine growth hormones and all of these
Right.
like pesticides and all of the foods that are
It's
being
very
consumed
processed and
by them.
unhealthy.
It's like, okay, well, that's not really fair for you guys to say that
Hmm.
this is the way to eat, but you have to do it by spending thousands and thousands of dollars on getting the best for it to work. I don't
Yeah.
know. It just, that doesn't seem realistic.
I want to comment on that term regenerative, because
Mhm.
like here in Lebanon you don't see this stuff. You see cow, you take meat and you eat meat.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no GMO, madri shu, whatever. You don't have these like random ass words. And when
Yeah.
I heard regenerative, it means, if does it mean like if I eat the steak, will it grow back? Like what does that mean?
Usually what they're referring to is the full experience of the cow from beginning to end, what they are eating,
Yeah.
where they are living, how they are living, how they
Hmm.
are then killed and processed and delivered. So it is the full experience of that cow. And
Hmm.
when we look at how most of the meat in especially America, but I mean at this point it is in a lot of places now too, is that it is done at mass scale. So what the
Mm.
cows are eating and where they are living in and how they are being
Hmm.
Slaughtered.
treated,
Yeah.
and the hormones in which they're being injected, it's just so that you can get as much as quickly as possible, the most amount of meat
Hmm.
as possible, and all of those things do impact the quality of the protein that we then consume. The hormones that you inject in the cow are not gone out of the piece of the meat that you are
Hmm.
consuming.
So it's like looking at the my plate, we should be eating more vegetables than meat, if anything. And
Yes.
is the reason why we don't do that is because like they just have a bad rep or something, or like they're just get called like vegans or LGBT5 WYST or something like that. Is that like the image, or what's going on?
I think that there is a lot of just contest around the science of plant-based diets versus meat-based diets.
Hmm.
And there's just this
Mm.
conflict that it's like you can't do both, which is, I find, a little bit unreasonable, because there
Hmm.
is something called the flexitarian diet, which is probably what a lot of us do, which is a little bit of both, right?
Hmm.
And like, you
Yeah.
can have animal protein and also have a very plant forward diet.
Right.
Um, and
Put
you
some
don't, you
carrots and
don't
some peas
have
and
to, it
some
doesn't
potatoes
have
with
to.
your steak. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. You can have a giant plate, like, a little bit of like a filet mignon, a little guy, on like
Yeah.
maybe a 4 ounce or something over here. And then the rest of your plate is all like vegetables and even like some carrots, which you can, some people are going to claim are a little bit more starchy and therefore could even
Hmm.
qualify. And, that can all work towards the same goal. So,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so black and white. And that's why I like again, going back to the My Plate, because it has this little corner for protein. And protein, yes, it can be a filet mignon. Yes, it can be ground beef. It can even be a hot dog, for crying out loud. But it can also be beans. It can also be tofu. And then it's like, okay, cool. So whoever you are and whatever you're looking to achieve, you can kind of make that work. But you do
Yeah.
need to know that it's not going to make up more than half of your plate, you know? Which I
I've
think is
tried
what
tofu,
it's
but I can't
leaning
get behind
towards.
that, to be honest. I've tried tofu, I can't get behind it.
You
Hey, to
It's
each
can't?
their own, bro. Everyone has their own.
I can't. It
I
needs
mean,
a lot of
tofu is
like
like the least
flavoring and stuff.
offensive food on the planet because it tastes like almost nothing. And you
Exactly.
can,
It's like a
yeah,
watermelon.
and it's so high in protein. It has, it's like it's an incredible food. Honestly, I have started. This sounds gross, but I was really impressed. Instead of using protein powder in my
Mm.
morning smoothie, I was like, I had run out one day and I was like, oh, I need something to add protein to this, but without making it taste weird. Like I'm not going to blend in a piece
Mhm.
of chicken with this. And I was like, I'm going to throw in just like half of a block of tofu. And it was
Hmm.
amazing because it
Wow.
just took on the flavor of everything else that was in there. It made it super creamy and smooth. It was delish. So, you can just throw it into anything. People are turning them into eggs now. Like you can do anything.
It sounds like tofu doesn't have a personality. That's
No, it
the
really
thing.
doesn't. It doesn't.
It's
That's
Its
the
harmless,
problem.
bro.
That's the
personality,
problem.
its personality is I'll be whatever you want me to be. And
Mm,
I'll be help you get strong and powerful. So it's like
Hey,
it's kind of like a yes man. I don't know.
healthy
all
proteins.
right, all right. Like a Lebanese businessman, It's like, yeah, opportunities. Let's go. Let's try
Yeah,
it all.
yeah.
um, I wanted to talk to you about like the general health crisis that we're going through in the U.S., but also all around the world. A lot of people
Mhm.
are getting more sick, despite us having more doctors, more personal fitness trainers, more health knowledge, and this. But it seems like health is actually taking a backward step, and a lot of people are too. And people are desperate for answers, so we look towards social media, and we're like, okay, social media has many different camps, and
Yeah.
let's say one camp is the natural versus the second one's artificial. The natural one is talking about regenerative health things, going back to simple eating, versus there's another camp that's encouraging young guys to get into steroids or meth or GLPs or
Wait, what?
all of that. Yes. So peptides, stuff like that. Like some people are totally embracing we're in the chemical age, we're in the modern science age. Dive. Let's do that. So I don't know. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on all that?
All of it. Well, I hope no one's doing meth, but
People are. People are.
whoever's promoting the use of meth really
Said,
needs
you've
to
heard
be
that,
kicked
right?
offline.
You've heard
Um,
guys on social media be like, "I'm using meth to get my gains, to get my
no, I
energy,
was.
to get
Bro, I don't know
lean."
what your algorithm is showing you at this point.
Yeah, that one is
Um,
not coming up on mine, but
that's crazy.
that is terrifying. I'm pretty sure illegal as well, but
But so are the
but
regular steroids anyway, and people do that. Have been doing that for ages, and now it's becoming a new thing. And uh, guys are getting into it at younger and younger ages too. So what's that gonna
well,
do?
yeah, I mean, I think what I will touch on for sure is like the rise of using
Mm-hmm.
pharmaceuticals for our health,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So GLP-1s,
Mm-hmm.
peptides, all of we're like everyone all of a sudden is like jabbing themselves with needles left, right, and center, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like there's definitely some pros to it and there's definitely going to be some cons to it, some which we already know and some which we don't. And
Yeah.
that is, to me, the scary part is that a lot of this is so new that we are taking some moderate risk in just throwing all these things into our body that we don't even know, like never mind one, like now people are putting in like 17 different
Mm-hmm.
things and they're like, I think
Right.
that'll be fine. I mean, I don't know. It seems a little bit risky to me. Um, the GLP-1s have had a lot of research on them, and we already know there are significant side effects to their use, while there are also some incredible benefits to their use. So that's why, with GLP-1s, they really should be always prescribed by a physician who, one, is sure that you are the right fit for this medication, that there is more benefit than there is risk to you starting these medications, and that you're also very well aware of what you need to do to make sure that any of the risks are mitigated. And that doesn't mean just injecting yourself every day with this medication. It means injecting yourself every day with or periodically with the medication, and doing weight bearing exercise,
Hmm.
and making sure that your nutrition is good, and working with a medical practitioner to personalize all of this to you. And with all of these injectables, like, unfortunately, too many of us are leaning just on the medication and thinking it's going to be this quick
Right.
fix, and that it's not going to have any downsides, and that it's just going to be, smooth sailing, and everything's going to be, rainbows and butterflies moving forward. And that's, you still have to do the work. You still have to do all of the protection work on the back end of all of the downsides. And especially with GLP-1s, where we see about 50%, 40-ish, actually 40% of the weight loss is coming from your muscle. If you're
Mm.
not doing weight bearing exercise, like, you have to make sure that you are doing the work. Otherwise, when you get off of it, which we also know that about 60% of people who are on GLP-1s are off of them before the end of the first year. That means that you're also going to need to make sure that you're set up for success long term.
Wow, and so you're saying it's more dangerous because if you're losing all that muscle weight and then you're just regaining just fat, then what are you doing?
You're
You're
actually just setting yourself up for a vicious spiral downwards, like,
hmm
you're dropping your metabolic rate. You are losing strength, which is really critical. It's really
hmm
hard to rebuild. This is all stuff that is associated with longevity. So you're also just putting yourself at risk, even just for your health span. So, yeah, very, very problematic if not done right. And I want to just
right.
reiterate that one more time, because
hmm
I am not saying that GLP-1s or even peptides shouldn't be done. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that they just need to be
Hmm.
done with incredible ease and caution, and with the understanding that that's not just the only thing that you're going to do. You're going to
hmm
have to pair it with other healthy habits.
What I like about
Hmm.
your approach is that you're individualizing it per person, and you're not saying that I have the solution right here, and
Yeah.
you're trying to educate us, and you're trying to learn about all the different aspects of health, and I think I'm making the realization that you need to try things out yourself, see what works for
Mhm.
you, and kind of ignore all the other noise that's out there. And because at the end of the day, your health goals are yours and unique to yourself.
Yeah, truly. You kind of do need to use yourself as a guinea pig. Ideally, with the support of a healthcare practitioner that uses evidence-based practices, that is always going to help just push the needle. Because there is something that I want to call out as a caveat to using yourself as a guinea pig,
Okay.
is that
Let's go.
sometimes, if you are, for example, if your gut health is a complete mess,
Hmm.
Hmm.
you might have a really hard time eating fiber, because your gut is just going to eat all that fiber and create gas. And
Mm.
then you're like, the
Hmm.
fiber must be bad for me. I should probably go and just eat a ton of red meat, because that
Mm.
has no fiber and it just goes through me and I have no gas and bloating. But that is not actually the solution. Even though you feel good and you don't feel as bloated when you've gone this, like, more carnivore route, What you really should be doing is taking a look at your microbiome and seeing, oh my gosh, this is completely awry. I need to rebuild my microbiome so that I can better digest high fibrous foods and rebuild that into my diet. So I just
Mm-hmm.
want to throw in that like little yellow flag that,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
that's why it is really important to work with a healthcare practitioner, because they'll be able to help you understand and know when to like really fully go in full force with any given protocol.
Right,
Could
because
you give
things
us
take
like
time. Because like people switch around diets so fast, and like they want quick results in like a week or two, and like realistically things take months and months, if not longer, for you to see true effects
Right.
and changes. Do you agree?
Yeah,
yes,
and not to mention like we're all at this point, we've gone through our lives and probably eaten and drank and lived in so many different environments that have changed our body in a lot of ways. Um,
mm-hmm.
we all have a genome that kind of influences everything in our body, but that is influenced by our environment and the epigenome, so everything that kind of determines how our genome actually is going to kind of guide our body into whatever direction. But that epigenome is influenced by the environment, by the things that we do, by our exercise, by what we eat,
Mm-hmm.
like, and so that is constantly changing, and that is constantly being impacted. And so that again adds a huge level of personalization required to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And also is probably in many cases kind of setting us into maybe a less healthy state than what we might assume, even if, you started a January 1st, New Year, New resolution.
So speaking on the environment affecting your eating style, how much do the people around you affect your eating lifestyle as well?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is huge. So in the world of longevity, community is a one of the biggest
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of components of supporting healthy aging. So community should be included as a part of your well-being, both in
Mm-hmm.
when we eat and how we eat and all of those wonderful things. It helps lift your mood, but it also has some downsides too, right? Like we think about when we go visit our extended family, our grandmothers, our mothers, and they are like, okay, eat more of this. Oh, look at this delicious dessert that I
Oh
made
yeah.
you. And so there's definitely a healthy balance that has to be made in between bringing community and family together, and
Mm-hmm.
learning how to do that in a healthy way. And so there are a lot of things, and like there's a big onion to unpeel here when we talk about who and how we eat with,
Yeah.
um, because of those two variables kind of coming together. But I'm generally a big proponent of the more people you are sitting around eating the table with, the better.
All right. For me, I think grandma. So like I support like eating healthy, and I try to learn as much as I can and apply it to myself. And then when my grandma tries to push, you know, unhealthy food onto me, I look at it as like this is my cheat day. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's it's all right. If my community, this is why I work hard, to burn weight so that I can eat whatever I want from whoever sent, from whoever. So that's
Yes.
I think for me maybe that's the balance. I don't know if someone else thinks that's a good idea and they're like, oh, let me try that. You can have that.
Absolutely. Especially if like you're seeing your extended family periodically, right? And
Yeah.
so if it's like a once a week family catch up, amazing.
Hmm.
That's a great time to indulge and enjoy and appreciate all of these foods that like are
Right.
truly bringing you joy. And that's a very important balance that we need to maintain.
Hmm.
For individuals where you are having family meals every single night, there that in those cases, my recommendation is always to get involved in the meal making. So I just went back home for the holidays with my parents, and they are a meat and potatoes kind of family. And
Okay.
it's so funny, like thinking and growing up in that household, that was like really all we had. And this year when I went back home, I was like, great, I would love to participate in making the meal, and I will always make the vegetable dish for dinner. So you guys still make your meat and potatoes, and I will still put some of that on my plate. But if we go back to my plate, I'm putting
Right.
it in kind of that order. And then I made a ton of vegetables. And lo and
Balance.
behold, not only am I making myself feel better and healthier and lighter, but I'm also helping my family, because now they're also, hopefully going to be able to not only, well, sure, for the meals that I'm there, but I'm hoping some of it kind of sticks around when I leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can
That's a
you
good
explain
point.
to us a bit more of the psychology of eating, and when we eat and how we eat and what drives us to eat and the emotions behind eating too, and like
Oh my
our
goodness.
interests too, and like why we have preferences in foods, and that can be unhealthy or what? If you can explain that
Yeah,
more.
for sure. Oh my gosh. I mean, this is a whole, this could be like a 3-day podcast in itself. Um, Truly, how and why we eat. I mean, the psychology of
Hmm.
eating. I mean, and also the biology of eating. So there's a lot of things that are playing into it, right? Because um, there are hunger hormones in our body that are naturally produced to point us towards food. Our body is also just through evolution more is going to crave and desire foods that are going to give us the most amount of energy, aka calories, per bite. That's why our bodies have evolved to really love things that are high in sugar and high in these fats that
Hmm.
are able to give us a lot of energy in a really short period of time. Because back pre-evolution, or not pre-evolution, but at the beginning of time, we would have had a really difficult time finding these things, and we would be going long periods of time without food. So whenever you could find something that was high energy, you would take as much of it as you can. So that evolutionary component of our being is no longer very helpful to us, because now we have food around us all of the time. So our craving for these very highly palatable foods that have high energy density is actually a downside, because we could have so many of them that it actually now becomes problematic. So it is now a really big problem. I think when we really come down to the root of it, the biggest problem is our food system. It is the fact that the food that we are surrounded by and constantly available to us is the food that our bodies and our brains and our craving and are guiding us towards. And so it really does take a lot of our brain and body power to set ourselves up in a space where we are less confronted by all of these things. When we fill up our fridge and our pantries, to not always grab and gravitate towards those things, to work towards finding foods that we like that also support our health. But that is yes, it's going to be work, and you can't just grab all of these things that your body just naturally might want
Hmm.
in that way all of the time.
You have to fight your temptation. You have to
Mhm.
fight your desire, pretty much. What you
Well,
want, you got to say no.
yes and no. So I want to, on the topic of the psychology of nutrition, one of my favorite topics is intuitive eating.
Hmm.
And the concept of intuitive eating is the ability to actually say yes to absolutely everything. That is
Mm.
the mantra of intuitive eating. There's no foods that are off limits.
Mm.
Now, importantly, in this concept of intuitive eating, you are always checking in with your body, your taste buds, just your sensations before, during, and after eating. And so with that, you are giving yourself the full power and control to decide when and if you want to stop. And if you don't want to stop, don't. But it really reclaims this power, because there is definitely a psychology of when somebody tells you you can't have that you want it so much more, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And so with intuitive eating, it's beautiful because you are telling yourself always, you can have that. And then you're asking yourself, do you want that still? So the way that this goes, just so like we can kind of go through an example, you think that you're hungry, you are sitting and watching a TV show, and you're like, I think I really want chips right now. That's what I feel like having. So what ideally you would do is you would pause your TV show so that you are not distracted. You would sit and you would say, okay, for like even like 5 seconds, like, okay, am I actually hungry right now? Do I actually want those chips? Is that really what I want? And if you still decide the answer is yes, cool, go and grab those chips. Now you're going to open up the bag and you're going to take a second, smell the chips, have your first one, feel the texture, taste it, literally like close your eyes if you have to and be like, was that like really what I wanted? And did that fuel me? Yes. Okay, great. Now I'm going to continue to enjoy these chips mindfully until I feel like I've had enough. Ideally, not just bringing the whole bag back to the couch and turning it on, because that takes out all of the intuition and the connectivity with your body.
Right.
And you can eat as many of those chips until you are like, you know what? These don't taste as good as I really thought they did. Or I'm actually feeling full now. Or for whatever reason, this is working or not working for me anymore. And then when you're done, you put them away and you go back. And this is ideally how you would handle any of these situations. Now, the way that I just described it, it's like, why would I, oh my God, like so much work that this doesn't sound realistic, but I will say that it is kind of like a muscle that you have to work. And so in the beginning, yes, it's going to be almost like that painstaking for everything that you do. But what you're doing is you're training this muscle in your body to be more intuitive about how you eat. This is something that I had started to practice probably about maybe almost a decade ago. And now, like how I used to eat to how I eat today is drastically different. I can sit down at a meal and talk to people and even have the TV going and be far more aware of my body and when I am full and when I've had too much and what I need. But you do have to train those muscles. So intuitive eating, I'm a big believer of it. There's a book written on it. If you're interested, it's incredible. And it will open your mind.
Fantastic. They should be teaching us these things at school. That's for sure.
Really?
Like from our kids, because it's a lot harder when you're older and you already have all your habits in and your preferences, and you're just like, okay, now I want to change and unlearn everything I've learned for the past 27 years. Let's do it.
Psychology of change would be another really like 4-part episode that you could do. But in some of my like most important kind of tips for habit change is pick something really, really small, something that you think that you could do for the rest of your life. Don't pick like, I'm using myself as an example. I was like, I'm going to start tennis and I'm going to go play tennis 3 times a week for all of 2026. And like, that is completely unreasonable. There is no world where I do that. And there's also no world where I would do that for the rest of my life. What might be realistic is for me to take 1 tennis lesson a month for the year. And I think that I could realistically do that for the rest of my life too.
That makes sense.
Right. And so maybe it's like a step counting, like maybe right now the average American is doing about 3,500 steps a day.
Wow.
The goal is closer to 10,000. So
average.
Yeah, that's average.
So some people are like out here on the 500 steps a day, like
Right. And so let's say you're a 3500er, right? Okay. I'm not
Yeah.
going to go and tell you go hit 10K.
Yeah.
No way you're going to fail that no problem. So better to say, okay, I'm going to do 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that you can actually implement for the next month and definitely for the rest of your life. And so taking these little tiny goals that you can do and doing them one at a time is the key. So again, not stacking like 17 things that you need to do for your health. Picking one thing that you are willing to do, are able to do, and actually doing it is the key.
All right. And let's ask about autophagy. Autophagy.
Yes.
Okay, I've heard
Yes.
of it, and pretty much once you stop eating for a while, your body starts healing itself. Now, what is actually happening?
Yes. So autophagy is maybe one of my favorite things. It's actually getting a very good little PR push these days too.
Mm,
The world is everyone's trying to turn on autophagy.
mm-hmm,
Autophagy, it literally means self eating.
mm-hmm.
So, what is happening is that when our body is in enough of a repair and rejuvenation state, which is a little bit of a stressed state, which I can spend some more time explaining kind of how we get there. But
Mm-hmm.
the really only way that you can turn that on is through very significant calorie restriction and or fasting. And so when we are in this state, our body will shift into this repair and rejuvenation mode because it's saying, I don't have enough nutrition here to spend time on growing and building. So if I can't grow and build with nutrients and building blocks for this, then I'm going to focus on repair and rejuvenation. And if you live in that repair and rejuvenation state for at least about 2 days, then the body says, okay, well, we're going to be here for a while. So we're going to put in some additional machinery to do some good work here. And that's when it turns on autophagy.
Mm-hmm.
And what you see is it's kind of like a gradual increase over time. The longer you stay in that fasted state, the longer autophagy and the more stronger, I guess, autophagy and more active it will be in your body. And so then usually around like the tail end of day 3, we see it kind of hit its max. And then usually people will be able to live and let it do its cleanup job over the course of a few days. So what we see is that self-eating. So the body has these little organelles, or essentially I like to think of them like garbage compactors that are
Mm-hmm.
going around and hunting down the cellular components that aren't working very well.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how, a performance car goes around the track a few times and then needs to go and do a pit stop to clean things up so that it can keep going.
Right.
Our body needs to do the same thing. We need to periodically be like, oh man, like we've been using this one mitochondrial cellular component like a ton. Why don't we go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup here? And you can literally, there's now even a new term called mitophagy, so that you can clean up that specific cellular component, that mitochondria, the energy builder of the cell. All of this stuff needs to be cleaned up so that it can work better. And that's what autophagy does. And that's why it's so amazing. It literally kind of turns you into a younger version of yourself because it is getting out the old and putting in the space for the new.
Wow.
So is it like recommended for? I kind of want to go into the topic of like biological age and like how they say it. Now they're talking about reversing your biological age and there's Brian Johnson. I think that's his name, right? Ali, you correct me if I'm
Mm-hmm.
wrong.
Yes, Brian
Yeah,
Johnson. Yes, very familiar.
the man who is like what in his 50s whose biological age is in 20 something. I don't know.
Mhm.
He looks like a vampire, and
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. I don't know if like how do you do that, but anyway, going to autophagy, is that like recommended for reversing your biological age? And then going forward, my second question would be, can you explain to us what is biological age and how does someone just play with that? Like that doesn't,
Yeah.
like what's the head?
So autophagy. Okay, so first, actually, let's talk about what is biological age and how do you measure it, because that will help us
Yeah.
answer whether autophagy helps it or not.
Okay.
So biological age is essentially the age of our body behaves, right? Or the way that our cells behave. And so that's what we're trying to measure.
Yeah.
Now, the way that biological age is measured is not just one way. There are a lot of ways that we are measuring biological age. And unfortunately, right now, there's no single gold standard. Now, I actually am a big believer of the pheno age measurement of biological age that uses just basic blood markers that have been long associated with healthy aging. Now, it is not the fanciest one. There are fancier ones that use things like telomere length or that use your epigenetic markers. So things like Horvath's clock, for example. I
Mm.
would say right now, in terms of kind of the fancier ones, that one's typically cited as one of the better options using some of those epigenetic markers. Um, and methylation sites, not to get too deep into it, but essentially they're looking at some of these markers on your genetics. So that is one way to measure it. But we're seeing that different interventions do different things to your biological age that we wouldn't necessarily expect. And maybe one intervention that you do might increase your biological age if you measure it with this, but it'll decrease your biological age if you measure it with this, and it'll increase your biological age if you measure it with this one. So it's like, which one are you really using? So we are always quite cautious on, putting too much weight on biological age and the measurements that we use to do it. But that's why, again, I really like the pheno age that uses, kind of some of the lab values that we consider to be tried and true in our health and wellness and longevity. I'm not 100% sure which one Brian Johnson has used. I actually recently was asked which one Function Health uses, and I'm not sure either, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're using a Horvath's clock.
Okay.
Or, there are companies now like True Diagnostic that do a lot of the different ones. So you can actually get different clocks to measure your biological age, or they'll use what I think that they're doing now is that they're doing all of them and then they kind of give you a combined score using all of them.
Okay.
So anyway, that's kind of a long way to say how's biological age measured, which means that it's like we don't really know how to measure it
Okay.
fully. But what we do know is that autophagy is cleaning up our cells and making them younger. That we do know to be true. Autophagy can work pretty much in all of our cells in different levels and capacities. And therefore, what we see when we turn on autophagy and what we see with fasting and fasting mimicking, because autophagy is really, really turned on, is that it has impacts on a lot of our systems. So there are now, in fasting mimicking alone, about 45 clinical trials, and it is across a lot of different health conditions. So we are looking at things like our autoimmune health and immunity. We're looking at things like oncology and cancer care. We're looking at things like our cognitive health and neurodegenerative diseases. We're looking at things across metabolic health, like type 2 diabetes, and have even been able to show remission and regression there. Gut health and changes in the gut lining. So all of these things are being impacted and improved because we're working with autophagy at the most root cause level of our health, which is our cell. Our cell makes up absolutely everything. Our skin, our eyes,
Right.
our, everything is made up of cells, right? So if we're doing cleanup there, we're having an impact really full body. And that's why, there is a lot of consideration for using fasting and fasting mimicking protocols in a lot of different health conditions.
Okay. Yeah, we're convinced. Sad and I will start our fasting protocol, and maybe in a year from now we'll reconnect with you, Renee, and see. Tell you what we've achieved, and or
you don't even need that much time. You don't. You could do one 5-day cycle once a month for 3 months, and there are a ton of benefits that you'd see. So why don't we reconnect in 4 months?
All right then.
That's,
Fantastic then.
that
Because
works as well.
like it sounds like a great plan, and so what you're sharing is that there's ways to get into autophagy but still stay eating.
Yes, exactly. The fasting mimicking protocol is exactly that. You get breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack, all the food, that you would typically have in a day, but it's very specific foods, very specific ingredients and specific combinations so that it lives below the kind of radars that would trigger you out of a fasted state.
Wow.
Mm.
And you wouldn't have to be hungry too because you're
I mean, I find myself still a little bit moderately hungry. It's still calorie restricted. So the
Mhm.
first day is about 1100 calories, which is a
Mhm.
breeze. But then days two
Okay.
through five is about 800 calories. So it's
Whoa.
still, quite restricted. But the foods that are included are very carefully selected to be as satiating as possible. So most people make it through quite easily. There's lots of tips and tricks to make it kind of smooth sailing.
Okay. And what if we're like working out too? So do you recommend on days of fasting to not be doing weightlifting or other kinds of workouts?
Yeah, we recommend that people do some movement like walking and stretching and some light exercise,
Hmm.
but nothing super significant. So you wouldn't want to do like a full weight bearing exercise workout or a HIIT workout or go for a long run. Like that's the stuff that you want to save for after your protocol. Now, for fasting mimicking, especially these prolonged 5-day fasts where we see these really significant benefits and we turn on autophagy, we only want to do these like 3 times a year. So it's not like you're doing this all of the time,
Hmm.
Mhm.
or like deviating from your exercise routine for a long period of time. It's only for 5 days and it's only a few times a year.
All right. So cancel your cycling class, Ali. I mean that
Just for those 5 days.
Just for
But
five
yeah,
days.
yeah.
Yeah, can do. That sounds good. Anything else,
yeah,
Saeed?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, most people are like, okay, a little bit of rest time. I'm good. I'll take it.
um, I don't have any more questions, Ali. Is that
No,
you have anything
fantastic. I
else to ask?
mean, like this is a wealth of knowledge, and hopefully we can
Hmm.
reconnect a couple months down the line, and we can try it out ourselves, me and Saeed, and have a little before. And how do you recommend us getting like before and after, like doing like actually like testing ourselves or knowing
Yeah,
knowing actually what changed, because sometimes it's hard to know if
for
what you're
sure.
doing is making a change.
Yeah. Well, there are programs now that are led by a company called L-Nutra Health that
Hmm.
will do pre and post labs for you. It's included in the program. So they'll just send you to a lab with like a diagnostic slip and say, or a requisition slip so that you can go get the labs drawn before. And then when you're done your protocol, which they guide you through for, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on who you are and what your goals are, then you will retest every 3 months or so. Now, if you work with your doctor, then you can also do pre-test labs with them. So
Hmm.
before you would start your protocol, you would go in and you would just go in for like your annual physical. They'll be able to run pretty much anything that needs to be run. The issue that you are going to have to work with them through is getting the next set of labs.
Mm.
If you're generally healthy, then usually those aren't covered by insurance
Mm.
because it's so soon after. So you may have to pay a little bit out of pocket for your retest labs if it's been too close. But usually for people, especially if you do have things out of range, then your insurance will cover them quarterly. So every 3 to 4 months, which is kind of right in line. So yeah,
Sounds like a
that's,
Go
plan.
insurance. Yeah.
yeah.
Saeed, are you in?
Right.
Are you in, Saeed, or are you out?
Let's do it.
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it.
Let's
Okay,
do
Renee.
it. I
All
Well,
right.
love it.
we'll reconnect with you, Renee. Sounds good.
All right.
Perfect.
Saeed.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Amazing.
guys. Thank you guys for watching another episode of A to the Show. Today we've had the wonderful Renee Fitton. Oui? Right? Okay, I
Oui, c'est
tried.
moi.
Merveilleux.
Um, this episode will come out in the next couple of weeks. We'll obviously let you know. And thank you for watching. See you guys.